Hello, 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 hello. Okay, we are live now. Hello, everybody. Last weekend in Bangkok, there is a big earthquake. Oh, the whole world is, no, the whole city is shaking. At that time, I'm on a high building, high building. Wow, the whole building is shaking. I'm so worried. But luckily, the building is not, the building is solid. Okay, so I'm still alive right now, and I can make this live show with you, with everybody. Thank God. Oh God, save me. So, thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thank God. Let's read the new chapter, the chapter 16. The creature came to America. Okay. The story of the Bank of North America, the nation's first central bank, which was formed even before the Constitution was drafted. Okay. The second, the story of the first bank of the United States, the nation's second central bank, which was formed in 1791. Oh God. The massive inflation caused by both banks. The cause of their demise. The cause of their demise. Okay. It is surprising fact that the United States had its first central bank even before the Constitution was drafted. It was chartered by the Continental Congress in the spring of 1791 and opened its door the following years. There were great expectations at that time that the province of Canada would soon join the rebel colony to form a union extending across the entire North American continent. In anticipation of that, the new financial institution was called the Bank of North America. The bank was organized by Robert Morris, a member of Congress who was the leader of the group of politicians and merchants who wanted the new nation to imitate the mercantilism of England. Imitate, 效仿 imitate. They wanted high taxes to support a power centralized government, high tariffs to subsidize domestic industry, a large army and navy, and the acquisition acquisition acqui- acquisition of colonial outposts to expand into foreign lands and markets. He was a wealthy Philadelphia merchant who had profited greatly from war contracts during the Revolution. He had carefully studied the secret science of money and by 1781 was widely considered to be the financial wizard of Congress. The Bank of North America was modeled closely after the Bank of England, following the practice of fractional reserve. It was allowed to issue paper promissory notes in excess of actual deposits, but since some gold and silver had to be held in the vault, there were definite limits to how far that process could go. Banknotes were not forced on the people as legal tender for all debts, public and private, but the government did agree to accept them at their face value in payment of all taxes and duties, which made them as good as gold for that specific purpose. Furthermore, unlike the central bank of today, the Bank of North America was not given the power to directly issue the nation's money, functioned as a central bank. On the other hand, the bank was given the right of monopoly in its field, which means there were no other banknotes allowed to circulate in competition. This plus the fact that the money were accepted at face value in payment of all federal and state taxes, plus the further fact that the federal government did not at that time have a functioning money of its own, made these banknotes attractive for use as a circulating medium of exchange. The intended result was that the bank's paper would be accepted as money, which for a while it was. Furthermore, the bank was made the official depository of all federal funds, and it almost immediately loaned 1.2 million to the government, much of which was created out of nothing for the purpose. So, in spite of the limitation placed upon the bank, and in spite of the fact that it was essentially a private institution, it was intended to be, and in fact did, function as a central bank. Okay. The Bank of North America was fraudulent from the very start. Fraud, fraudulent, fraudulent, fraudulent. From the very start, the chatter, 特许状 chatter required that private investors provide 400,000 for the initial subscription. When Miller was unable to raise that money, he used his political influence to make up the shortfall out of government funds. In a maneuver that was nothing less than legalized embezzlement, he took the gold that had been loaned to the United States from France and had it deposited in the bank. Then, using this as a fractional reserve base, he simply created the money that was needed for the subscription and loaned it to himself and his associates. Such is the power of the secret size. It is hard to reconcile reconcile It is hard to reconcile the fact that the same man who adopted the brilliant monetary restraints to the Constitution a few years later would have allowed the Bank of North America to exist. It must be remembered, however, that the war was still in progress when the charter was issued, and even the wisest of statesmen are often obliged to follow expedients, often ex, ob, by, obla, oblige, 强迫 to follow the expediency, follow the experience in such time. One also must conclude that while the founding fathers were wise on the nature of fiat money created by the government's printing press, they had not yet had extensive experience with the same mechanism hidden behind the obs- obscurity of fractional reserve banking. Who is obscurity? 掩护 Okay. It is hard to reconcile the fact that the same man who adopted the British monetary restraints of the Constitution a few years later would have allowed the Bank of America to exist. It must be remembered, however, that the war was still in progress when the charter was issued, and even the wisest of statesmen are often obliged to follow expedience in such time. 很难调和这样一个事实。几年后采纳了下盘中限制出的同意，竟然允许被命运和错。然而，必须记住，即使最睿智的政治家，这个时期还不得不采取权宜之计，还必须得出结论。尽管开国元勋对政府运营传导法律会有本质人，但他们上隐藏在部分准备金行这复杂性背后的相同机制是广泛见。OK, it's hard to reconcile 是一致调和。The fact that the seamen who adopt the British monetary strain of the Constitution a few years later would have allowed the Bank of America to exist. It must be remembered, however, that the war was still in progress when the charter was issued, and even the wisest of statesmen are obliged to follow experience at time. Follow experience. Follow experience. One also must conclude that 我们也必须得出结论什么 Well, the founding fathers were wise on the nature of fiat money created by the government's printing press that had not yet had extensive experience with the same mechanism had behind the obscurity of French reserve banking. Obscurity is a more one to live. Obscurity of fiat fractional reserve banking。国会特许发行纸币资助战争特许。1985年，1785年美元标准化，1787年宪法。OK。OK， 北美银行是3银行之一，第一合众银行1789年。OK。In any event, the bank was not have its charter renewed by Congress, and it did not survive beyond the end of the war. Maury Rothbard details the demise. Despite the monopoly privileges conferred upon the Bank of North America and its nominal redeemability in spices, the market's lack of confidence in the inflated notes led to their depreciation outside the bank's home base in Philadelphia. The bank even tried to bolster the value of its notes by hiring people to urge redeemers of its notes not to insist one spice, a move scarcely calculated to improve the long-run confidence in bank. After a year of operation, Morris' political power slipped, and he moved quickly to shift the Bank of America from a central bank to a purely commercial bank chartered by the state of Pennsylvania by the end of 1783. The first experiment with a central bank in the United States had ended. OK. 莫里斯 Okay, I see. Despite the monopoly privilege conferred upon the Bank of North America. 您是英文老师，帮我翻译中文，并注明细节。被授予垄断特权，其认可兑换硬币，但市场上对其膨胀的票据缺乏信心，导致什么呢？导致这些票据在银行大本营以外地区贬值。银行试图通过雇人劝说兑换单元不要坚持索取硬币来支撑票计价人，这一举措几乎无助于提升市场对银行的在这一年，航母里的政治权力衰退，在市场价没有要求仍要变迎来自己纯商业银行。Despite of the monopoly privilege conferred upon the Bank of North America and is no nominal redeemable. Nominal. 名义上 nominal. Redeemability in spices. 便是 species 不是 species The market's lack of confidence in the inflated notes led to their depreciation outside the bank's home base in Philadelphia. The bank even tried to bolster the value of its notes by hiring people to urge redeemers of its notes not to insist on species. A move calculated to improve, scarcely calculated to improve the long-run confidence in the bank. After a year of operation, Miri's political powers slipped, and he moved quickly to shift the Bank of North from a central bank to a purely commercial bank characterized by the state of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania. By the end of it, the experience with the central bank in the United States has ended. A fitting epilogue to this story was written 200 years later, when, in 1980, the first Pennsylvania Bank of Philadelphia, the oldest bank in the nation, was bailed out by the FDIC. Oh, I see. Oh, I remember. Okay. Epilogue. 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 An end run around the Constitution. An end run around. An end run around. An end run around. An end run around. It will be recalled that after the Bank of America was terminated, and after the Constitutional Convention closed to the door on paper money, the United States enjoyed a period of unparalleled paralleled economic growth and prosperity. But while the door may have been closed, the window was still open. Oh my God, the door closed, but the window was still open. Congress was denied the power of print money, but it was not denied the power to borrow it. Oh my God. Oh my God. I see. The window was still open. In the vocabulary of the common man, to borrow is to accept a loan of something that already exists. Is confused. Therefore, when the banker issues money out of nothing and then says he's lending it, he appears to be lending, but in reality he's grading. Then, as now, the mysteries of banking vocabulary were not revealed to the average man, and it was difficult to understand how private issued banknotes could serve precisely the same purpose as printing press money with precisely the same disa- disa- disastrous 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 result. That being the case, the monetary and political scientists decided to end run the Constitution. Their plan was to establish a bank to give the bank the power to create money to lend most of the money to the government, and then to make sure the IOUs are accepted as money by the public. Congress, therefore, would not be emitted bills of credit. The bank would do that. Oh my God! The window still open. Thus, the first Bank of the United States was conceived. Conceived，构思好了。Conceive, receive，发明、创造、怀下、怀孕。The proposal was submitted to the Congress in 1790 by Alexander Hamilton. who at that time was Secretary of the Treasury. Incidentally, 附带的、偶然的、顺便的 incidentally was former aide of Robert Miller's founder of the North America. So, in that sense, his role in this matter is not surprising. What is surprising is the fact that Hamilton had been a staunch, 坚定的 supporter of a sound currency during the Constitutional Convention 制宪会议. This is hard to reconcile, and one must suspect that even the most well-intentioned of men can become corrupt by the temptations of wealth and power. It is possible that Hamilton Morris and other Federalist leaders had hoped to keep the government out of the money-making business, not because it was the constitutional thing to do, but because that would leave the field clear for a central bank mechanism, which, because it was further from public view and political control, could become their own private engine of profit. It would appear that the only other explanation is that these men were fickle in their views and did not really understand the implications of their acts in view of their brilliance in all other matters, however. It is difficult to master the enthusiasm of that interpretation. OK， 哇，挂羊头卖狗肉，这真的是挂羊头卖狗肉啊！我看一看，这标题是什么？An end run around the Constitution. 规避宪法约束 ，an end run around the Constitution. 该提案 proposal 由亚历山大·汉密尔顿交给国会，当时他是在书面推举，汉密尔顿的助手，因此从意义上讲，他在此中的角色里，令人惊讶的是，汉密尔顿在这样会议一直是健全和平经济者，真实是难以谈话。人们不禁怀疑，即使是最具善意的人，也可能因为财富和权力的因火而斗的，有可能汉密尔顿、莫里斯其他联邦人的人希望将政府排除在货币制造业务之外，并非因为而是因为这会对中央机制扫清障碍。这种机制由于远离公众视野和政治控制，可能成为他们个人盈利的攻击。另外一种解释似乎是，这些人的观点上反复无常，并未真正理解其行为后果。然而，鉴于他们在其他方面很难理解The proposal was submitted to Congress in 1790 by Alexander Hamilton, who at the time was Secretary of Treasury. Hamilton incident was a former aide to Robert Miller's founder of the Bank of North America. So in that sense, his role in this matter is not surprising. What is surprising is the fact that Hamilton had been staunch support of a sound currency during the Constitutional Convention. This is hard to conceal, and one must suspect that even the most well-intentioned of men can become corrupted by the temptations of wealth and power. It is possible that Hamilton and other federal leaders had hoped to keep the government out of the money-making business, not because it was constitutional sin, it was the constitutional sin to do, but because that it would leave the field clear for a central bank mechanism, which, because it was further from public view and political control, could become their private engine of profit. And it appeared that the only other explanation is that these men were fickle in their field and did not really understand the implications of their acts. In view of their brilliance in all other matters, however, it is difficult to master asceticism. Instill, instill the enthusiasm, brilliant, interpretation. Interpretation. The Hamilton-Jefferson conflict. Hamilton's proposal was strongly opposed by Thomas Jefferson. Then several states, and this was the beginning of a heated political debate that would preoccupy Congress for many decades to come. In fact, it was one of the central issues that led to the creation of our first political parties. The Federalists gathered around the ideas of Hamilton. The Anti-Federalists, later called the Republicans, were attracted to the ideas of Jefferson. Republicans. Jefferson pointed out that the Constitution did not grant to Congress the power to create a bank or anything similar. That means such power is reserved to the states or to the people. In a rebuttal to Hamilton's proposal, he said, to take a single step beyond the boundaries that specially drawn around the powers of Congress is take possession of a boundless field of power, no longer susceptible of any definition. Furthermore, he said, even if the Constitution grants such power, it would be an extremely unwise thing to do because allowing the bank to create money could only lead the nation ruling.共和党还是真人做事呢？ 创建银行或任何类似机构的权利，这意味着这种权利保留在各州和人民。在汉密尔顿提出反应，他说，在国会权利中，特别是法定这点之外，迈出一步就是占有一个无边无际的权利，不再能够进行任何定义。此外，即使宪法授予了这样做也是极其不明智，因为允许银行创造货币只会导致国家毁灭。严格解释下，认为联邦政府的权利应该受到严格限制，导致联邦政府的权力的无限扩张。Boundless field of power. Boundless field of power. Just pointed out that the Constitution did not grant to Congress the power to create a bank or anything similar. That means such power is reserved to the states or to the people. In a rebuttal, Hamilton's proposal, he said, to take a single step beyond the boundaries that specially join around the power of Congress is take possession of a boundless field of power, no longer susceptible of any definition. Furthermore, he said, even the Constitution had granted such power, it would be an extremely unwise thing to do, because allowing banks to create money could only lead to national ruining. Hamilton, on the other hand, argued that was a good thing if kept within reason, and that the nation needs more money in circulation to keep up with expanding commerce. Only the bank, he said, will be able to provide that. Furthermore, while it is true the Constitution did not specifically grant the power to create such a bank, it was nevertheless an implied power, because it was needed to accomplish other functions which were granted in the Constitution. That was the end. Nothing could be more polarized than the opposing ideas of these two men. Jefferson, a private central bank issuing the public currency, is a greater menace to the livelihood of the people than a standing army. We must not let our rulers load us with the perpetual debt. No society could succeed which did not unite the interests and credit of rich individuals with those of the states. A national debt, or if it is not excessive, it will be to us a national blessing. American second central banks created. OK， 还是建立了哦。OK， 我们看一下啊。After a year of intense debate, Hamilton's view prevailed, and in 1791, Congress granted a 20-year charter to the Bank of the United States that was modeled closely after the Bank of England, which means it was almost an exact replica of the previous Bank of North America. In fact, as evidence of continuity with the past, the president of the new bank was Thomson Willing, the same man who had been a partner of Robert Millers and the president of the old bank. As before, the new bank was given a monopoly in the issuance of banknotes. Once again, these notes were not forced on the people as legal tender for private debts and contracts, but they are legal tender at face value for all debt to the government in the form of taxes and duties, which made them attractive for use as common money. And once again, the bank was made the offshore depository of all federal funds. The charter specified that the bank was required at all times to redeem its note in gold and silver species upon demand by the depositors. That was an admirable provision, but since the bank was not also required to keep species in its vaults in the full amount of its note obligation, it was a mathematical impossibility to uphold. As with the old Bank of North America, the new Bank of the United States was to have 80% of its capital provided by private investors, which the federal government putting up only 20%. Oh, that was a mere bookkeeping delay of hand. However, because it had been pre-arranged for the bank to immediately loan back to the federal government exactly that same amount, reminiscence of the Miller scheme in capitalizing the Bank of North America, this federal investment was the system that means whereby federal funds could be used to make up the shortfall of the private investors. Call it by what name you please, said Jefferson. This was not a loan or an investment, but an outright gift. And he was certainly right. The bank was able to open its doors with less than 9% of the private capital required by its charter. The total capitalization was specified at 10 million, which means that 8 million was come from private stockholders. However, as John Kennedy University observed, numerous thrifty participants confined themselves to a modest down payment, and the bank began operations on around all in hard rush cash. 我天，就行了。Oh my god！ 我天呐，我天呐！ The creature comes from Europe. Inflation all over again. Wildcat Bank. An instrument of plutocracy. Oh my goodness！ 太恐怖了啊！人类的贪欲导致这个事情只会向坏的方向发展。我们学到了什么呢？我们学到了人类的贪欲肯定促使这件事情向坏的方向发展，这是注定的，是不是？Jefferson 真的是好，Jefferson 真的是好人呐，Jefferson 不是好人，不能说用好人坏来对公众还是负责任的。 Okay, I think that's all for today. Thank you. Thank you. Good luck to everybody, to everyone. Good luck. Good luck to everyone. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Bye bye. See you. See you tomorrow.